Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I have one. Apologies if I'm unclear, this is my first Greentext. Background story. I'm in a university program where we basically study the architecture of local villages. I'm in the Southeast Asia area. Set up a big platoon tent in a field beside a small factory. We break off into groups that study different parts of the village. Nothing special with my group, interviewing some locals and measuring houses. One group says their area includes a river that is off limits. Let's call them the river group. Someone died in a flash flood some previous years near the river apparently. That night all the groups are cross-checking with each other's data. One girl, not from the river group, asks a girl from the river group. Was the victim who died in the flash flood a woman? Yes. Was she wearing a hijab? Yes. Was she a nurse? Fucking yes. Apparently the girl saw the victim enter the tent and sit among us and disappear. I got one or two more stories from this trip if anyone's interested. One of them involved the factory. Fuck this, it's 4 a.m. and I can't sleep. I'm the poster that studied the village. Still studying in the same village. Staying in the big platoon tent. It's a protocol to have night watch duty with 2 people in our university program. Wake the others up in case of wild animals, thieves, or spooks, pretty common in Southeast Asia area, especially rural areas. Guy, let's call him F, and girl, P, on watch. F is watching the entrance beside the factory. We basically dump our trash and food leftovers and put them in a plastic bag near the factory wall. F, looking around, notices something rummaging through our trash. Probably just a cat. He was right. Well, not quite. Noticed that the cat is abnormally large. It has black fur. F focuses on the cat, whispers to F, "Do you see it?" Yes. F shines a flashlight at the cat. That's not a cat.x. It was a humanoid, sitting cross-legged, but furry. And with the head of a cat too. WTF. Catman looks up to F. Gone in a blink. Ghosts are a part of Southeast Asia culture. But here in my country that is something unheard of. We took it up to the village elder and asked him about it. It was basically an ancestor spirit. Called it Meong, basically my language's version of meow. Still the same village poster. This one's short though. It's about the survey team that went ahead of the others to find a suitable area to camp on. Basically, our program is 5 days of studying the village and 2 days of camping in the forest. The survey team finds a clearing in the woods. Equipment doesn't work. Compass is incorrect and flashlights don't work. The survey team went ahead and stayed the night there. In the morning, their equipment is broken, flashlights cracked. Apparently they camped in an area where the flash flood has claimed some more lives. Looking back, the organizers of the program forgot to check for spooks with the village elder LMAO. Some of my friends felt creeped out when we first went into the village, but I was actually oblivious to any paranormal vibes. I heard all these when we returned.
If you have more, please share. South Asian spooks are among my favorites. Question: is this humanoid cat entity a common form for ancestors to take? Never heard of that before.
Village poster here replying. I have no idea how to tag your reply though. Nope, I've never heard of Catman ancestor spirits before. Sounds funny actually in the safety of my warm bed here in the suburbs, but a different story when you're in a tent in a village far away. I have no more stories from my personal experience to share, but I do have a lot of urban legend stories. Not sure if right now I remember any stories regarding folklore ghosts. We have Tuyul, a baby spirit that can be tamed to steal money. Kuntalanak, Wiwi Tombal, steals babies. Genderuwo, Pochong, basically a corpse risen from the dead. We wrap our dead so all they can do is jump and teleport. But pocong sightings tend to be surreally spooky. For example, one video sighting is a pocong standing still upright in the backseat of a moving motorcycle that looks eerily not from this world. If you're interested, HBO's Folklore shines light on Southeast Asian spooks. I'll share some urban stories in my next post. Village poster here. I'll just spill and say that I'm from Indonesia. This story here is an urban legend spread so many times that the details vary. University lecture. Students are already in the class. Main lecturer can't attend, is sick at home or busy with a meeting or Zoom. Replacement lecturer comes in. Main lecturer messages the class representative. Class is cancelled. Do your assignments and read page 45 to 65. Confusion.png. Class rep. Sir, the replacement lecturer is already here. Main lecturer. Leave the class. Right now, one at a time and calmly. Class representative drops his pencil and looks towards the lecturer's desk. No fucking. Legs.x. Holy fucking shit.rar. Class representative forwards the message to the class. They get out one by one. The last person to leave the class gets called out by the replacement lecturer. So all of you have known? Anyways, it's village poster and it's 5 a.m. here. About to post another one before I try to sleep. Not very Southeast Asia spooks vibe, but what the hell. Be my friend. Call him A. Visits a friend in hospital with another friend. Call him B. They both have their own cars, the friends visiting I mean. They leave the hospital and head home. Heading in the same direction on the highway. A is a smoker, drives with his windows down. A is in front of BB, keeps on honking. What the hell? They pull over after they exit the highway. What the hell? Why are you honking? B says he saw someone enter A's car. B thought it was another of A's friends. Apparently B saw someone limping out of the passenger window. B thought it was some kind of joke on behalf of A's friend. A was alone the entire time.
A lot of grandma house stories, so I'll add my own. To be exact, my great-grandmother's house. So my great-grandmother when she was alive used to live in a Dutch colonial house in Southeast Asia, PIC related. This was back in the mid-90s, a few years before she passed away at the age of 98. She used to live in this sizable property only with one of her daughters who never married, my grand-aunt, and one local helper to take care of the house. The layout of the house itself is shaped like two letters L piled on top of each other where the top L is inverted. So there's a small courtyard in the middle of the building. My dad recently told me that they at one point explored ways for the house to be recognized as a local heritage site because frankly houses like these are becoming extinct in the city that I lived in. So it really has that old-timey, nostalgic, and creepiness factor. From my earliest memory of visiting her when I was a kid, maybe from when I was 4 or 5, I never felt right in that house. It wasn't until I was doing my undergraduate studies, my grand-aunt still lived there, alone after my great-grandma passed, that I had enough courage to explore the house in its entirety. And we usually have family gatherings there at least 3 times a year. When I was a kid, I would always dread going to this house. If we were in the house and dusk was about to come, I would kick up a fuss of wanting to go home. One time, my dad proposed that we spend the night to keep my great-grandma and grand-aunt company, and I remembered I cried wanting to go home. It was something about the layout of the house, the smell, the hodgepodge of colonial artifacts and paintings, the slightly hidden rooms and corridors, and not to mention the weird vibes I keep getting from random corners of the house. Worst of all, there's a big well at the very back of the house, near the kitchen and the helper's room. So this well has always been a point of fascination for myself since I was little. Whenever I think of that house, the well is usually the second thing that comes to mind after the house itself. The well hasn't been used for God knows how long and is always covered up tightly by rather thick wooden planks with a square-shaped hatch that you can open on one side of the well. Of the times I went near the well, I always remember it to be closed and padlocked, probably to prevent us grandkids from playing around there and falling into it. Now this is where it gets interesting. One day when I was in 5th or 6th grade, we had a family gathering at the house, in the middle of the day for lunch. Almost everybody in my extended family from my dad's side was there. Both my dad's parents had already passed, so they were the only notable people missing. My great-grandma outlived them both. So in broad daylight after lunch, I was playing and talking like 6th graders with my brother and 2 of my other cousins. We were in the dining room that has a door that leads into the courtyard, and once you step out of the door, there is an outside corridor with the toilet, kitchen, helper's room, one mystery room to the right, and the well at the very end of the corridor. At one point little me needed to go piss, so I had to go to the toilet outside as it was the closest. As I stepped out, I remember that one of my aunts was in the kitchen with the helper because I passed them and saw them preparing something. Went into the old toilet that also gave the creeps, did my business and quickly stepped out again. At that moment, something just told me, or the voice in my head told me, to look right towards the well. Lo and behold, the hatch that was supposed to be closed and locked was noticeably open. Being slightly adventurous and curious, I opted to approach the well and wanted to see it myself, and wanted to see just what's inside that well that has been a source of curiosity. As I approached the well, I remembered feeling this sensation as if a gust was coming from inside the well. As I stood right beside the well, I mustered up any courage I had and peeked into the hatch. Nothing. Just pitch black, smelled musty, damp, and nothing else remarkable. So I withdrew my head from the hatch and just stood there by the well for a good minute or so, just taking in the atmosphere of being there, at a location where I've never had the courage to go before. Shortly after, my aunt, who was in the kitchen, noticed me standing there, called out my name, and approached me. She wanted to know what I was doing there, so naturally I told her I wanted to see what's inside the well. As she was walking towards me, she muttered out something along the lines of "nothing good," or "nothing worthwhile." When she finally got to me, her face changed to that of surprise. She asked me why the hatch is open and gave me a minute lecture on how dangerous it can be. I could tell that she was struck by the fact the hatch was actually open. As she herded me back into the dining room, she talked with the house helper in a stern tone, telling her that the hatch is open, asked the helper in somewhat of a panicky "why is it open?" and asked that the helper close the hatch again. The helper was as puzzled as we were. She told my aunt that she hasn't been near the well for days. That's when my aunt's face started to turn pale. I knew that something was not right, as they should be. As that realization set in, without much thought I just shot a question to my aunt about the well. Mind you, we were still in the kitchen, so it was just the 3 of us. I asked her, "What's up with that?" My aunt was rather hesitant, but she figured I was big enough to understand. It was then she told me that the family believes there is something, some energy, being, or spirit that dwells in the depths of the well. And she said whatever's in there is attached to our family. Weird side note. I already wrote a long continuation of the story, and the text erased itself as I was about to post it. Anyways, as we were just finishing up the story, we heard the sound. Clack, clack, clack. My aunt stepped out of the kitchen and she just froze in place. I came out to where she was standing and gazed towards wherever she was looking. The goddamn hatch was now closed. WTF. My aunt motioned for the house helper to come look and commanded her to find the key to the padlock and lock it up again. A few seconds after, one of my uncles came out of the dining room wanting to go to the toilet. He was wondering what we were up to there. My aunt simply replied,
"It's the damn well again."
My interest piqued. I asked, "Again?" My uncle, being the joker that he is, replied,
"It has a thing for kids."
You see, Anons, all of my aunts and uncles, including my dad, had lived in this house a number of years as they were growing up. At that moment, my uncle began reminiscing with my aunt about the time he saw a figure staring at the well only for it to disappear when he caused a commotion by calling out his other siblings. My aunt then replied with a story of her own, about when she once was going the outside toilet in the middle of the day and saw the well area being darker than the rest of the outdoor area. Apparently, a number of weird happenings have occurred related to the well. Clothes, cards, and decorations from the house were found around the well that were not supposed to be there. After a moment of storytelling, my uncle called out to my dad, who was in the dining room, telling him that I had just experienced the well. My dad just laughed and tried to calm me down. He casually mentions that one of his cousins almost fell into a well in the 70s and that's why they boarded up the well. He also said they thought about destroying the well and burying it, but my great-grandma opposed the idea. I wish that with all the people outside now, it was the end of the weird encounter that day. Maybe it was my heightened sense of fear or curiosity. I kept having bad vibes from the direction of the well. My aunt went back into the kitchen. My uncle went in and out of the toilet. The house helper found the key and locked the hatch again, while my dad and I walked around the courtyard. He introduced me to his former room, across the courtyard from the kitchen. We went in and it was evident nobody has been living there for years probably. It was all dusted up. There were stacks of old books and magazines, and there was the unmistakable smell of mold, I think. As we were in there, my mind was still fixated on the well. I threw glances every few seconds just to be sure it was actually closed. What I didn't expect was that something was brewing in the room as well. As my dad began to step out the door into the courtyard, I trailed him for 2 or 3 seconds, and that's when I heard either a murmur or a faint sob from inside the room. Writing this still makes me shiver. I turned around, looked around the room, and my eye became fixated on this chest that was in one corner of the room. Thinking I had enough excitement for one day, I tried to brush it off and walked right out of there without looking back. Didn't even tell my dad. So yeah, that's my story. Today, the family is still trying to sell the house. My grand aunt is now living with one of her sisters. But from the stories I've heard, it's as if the house does not want to sever ties with our family. There have been numerous attempts at renovating it and cleaning it from its clutter, but there are always weird occurrences going on in each of the attempts. Even now, as I'm living on the other side of the world, memories and images of that house are always vivid. I haven't been there for almost a decade now, but there's always a part of me that wants to go back and explore.
Sup, SEA Anon, from the previous thread, here with another tale. This happened over a decade ago, back when I was still at school. Secondary year 1, joined the school Scouts Association. Off camping, hiking and doing Inuit stuff as usual. Early evening, on the way to the campsite. Reached a bridge that directly connects the route to the campsite. About to cross it. Suddenly, one of our seniors, a guy I'll call Yuan, says stop, let's take a detour instead. What? Why?
This one is not safe.
The rest of us were confused. Sure, it's another one of those old wooden bridges that are often found in these sorts of spots, but it seems sturdy enough and no different from the other bridges we've crossed in the area before. The other senior students who were at the back leading other groups come over to ask what's going on. Again, Yuan tells them not to use the bridge, without elaborating on why he thinks it's not safe. Oddly, they don't question him either and told everyone they're taking another route to get to another bridge. Really curious, ask another senior student, let's call him Jim, whom I've been getting along with. What's up with that? Gave a curt, it's nothing. Which was very uncharacteristic of him, as Jim was usually pretty chill and often happy to answer whatever queries the newbies have. Still curious, but too tired to care at that point. Reached the campsite. The other group who were there ahead of us to set up camp, campfire, food etc. asked us why we were so late.
Got to take a detour from the bridge.
Why?
Yuan said so.
Yet again, the moment they mention it's by Yuan, it's like they got the answer they needed. Next day, break camp, and after the senior students who were in charge were done with their meetings and whatnot, we're preparing to leave and we're hiking back the same route. Asked Jim again. No, seriously, what's up with all that last night? Jim hesitated. Then, he slowly explained.
Yuan can see things. You might not believe it, but a couple of us have known each other long enough and gone on enough camping trips to know that Yuan isn't bullshitting. Last night, at that bridge, he said he saw something lurking just under the bridge. The thing was leering and smiling as we approached the bridge. Then when we decided to instead take another route, he saw that the thing began to glare angrily, baring its teeth, and kept staring at us as we left. Even after we've reached the other end of the bank, the thing was still there, scowling and hissing at us from beneath the bridge.
I scoffed. Yeah, cool story, make sure to tell it at the next campfire. Anyway, we kept walking till we reached that section where the bridge was at, and that's when we stopped again. That's when we saw it, the bridge had collapsed. The very same bridge we were about to cross last night. Well, shit.
Hey guys, it's me again. I never continued the thread proper but have a few more stories to tell to those who are interested, and to pique that interest I will be telling you about an obscure beast called a Sigbin, which my brother had the unfortunate incident of encountering it, along with a few stories of my stay in Brunei and encounters with Malaysian spooks. Be my brother, around 13 to 14 at this time. We have 6 chow chows. Basically lion-looking fluffy dogs. Mum loves them because they naturally ward off spirits. She's also very Filipino and not Chinese but still loves them. Dogs have a tendency to run out. One day our gate opens to let our car in. House entrance is the gate. Past that is the main door, so you have to go through the parking garage to get in or out of the house. 3 of the massive fuckers run like hell. I wasn't home so I couldn't help. Brother hunts them down at 9 p.m. at night. This was around 2008, and our subdivision, basically neighborhood, downtown, was still rural in many senses. A large abundance of belit trees, which in Filipino culture are usually enchanted and can either carry spirits or certain energy that attracts spirits and monsters. Even now we still have forests around our old house because to even cut them down and disturb them is incredibly bad for your long-term health, in being that you suddenly die days after or the entire operation begins to go wrong. Dogs get far from the house, around a kilometer. Poor Happy Child has to carry 3 large bear dogs away. They end up in an open field, a forest not too far beyond it. As my brother wrangles them up, he falls. And he can't get up. This isn't a life alert ad. Dogs are barking on something that seems to be resting on him or stomping him. Growling and screaming. Chows are very protective dogs. After what seems like minutes, he manages to get up. sees a completely white creature vanish. Creature has a set of glowing eyes between its legs, meaning its head twists to look under it. Brother is uneasy but gets home quickly. My mum is worried. She's always been the spiritual type due to our grandmother's involvement with black magic, so she grew up around it. Immediately, she inspected him without hesitation. 3 distinct claw marks, scabbed on his back. No tear on brother's shirt but same place when he felt he was being stepped on. He was marked by a Sigbin. As far as I'm aware, a Sigbin is a witch or a swang's familiar, which they keep in clay pots. They use them to hunt children down to turn into other creatures for the use of the said witch. As long as he was marked, he was the only one who could see the Sigbin, and if he was found again he would be taken away. Mum tells him to take a tricycle home and never walk or come home late. Me and him go to the same school, like a 10-minute walk away, so I would walk with him. One day I was sick and stayed inside. Brother spent all his money on food so he had to walk home. Around 7 p.m. at this time. Walks past the same area he had the confrontation in. Air smells bad, like straight piss and sweat. He starts to walk quickly. Sees out of the corner of his eye something white and fucking books it. He manages to get home in record time. As he reaches the gate, 300 meters down the road a white figure stands there. Eyes gleam enough like light is reflecting off of them. Bitch boy crying hard, but then again he took the same road like an idiot. For the better part of the year never take that road again. For exactly a year since he was marked, the mark would change places. From his back, to chest, to thigh, and most memorably to the back of his head. My grandmother called us the day my brother had the encounter after being marked, completely unprompted by the way. She said she would bring Lola over because she knows that my brother was being hunted, and apparently my Lola had a vision of where the witch lives and who she is. Surprisingly, my mother declined. The next story is short, but relevant. Across from the house downtown there used to be an open field littered with bolete trees. Much of the forests here can be purely bolete trees and creates a very eerie experience. This was when I met a Kapre. Kapre are usually harmless encanto, spirits, that nest in bolete trees, and are basically giants, estimated around 10 feet tall and always smoking huge wads of tobacco. Be me. Be 16. It's New Year's. An hour before New Year's everyone is drinking, smoking, having fun. Always host an annual New Year's party for our Parak neighborhood, and it's open but mainly for family. Still underage enough that no one openly hands me alcohol. Bored hanging out with everyone who isn't my age, so I go to the field. The main bolete tree sits right across from the house. Huge one, thick branches and hundreds of hanging vines. Probably almost 30 to 40 feet tall. Sit down and relax with some Coca-Cola. Had an iPod and was skipping through the songs. Suddenly I smell this wafting, overpowering scent. It's almost like if you walked into barbecue smoke, but if the charcoal was wet, ashy and very earthy. Gets in my lungs and I feel like I'm about to spew out literal tar if I cough. I look up, sees a big cloud of smoke, and 2 glowing eyes, but doesn't feel scared or worried. The smoke clears and I see the figure of a humongous human. I imagine that I was about the size of its calves. Very long hair, pipe half the size of me. Wearing a loincloth. Takes one look at my probably terrified face and laughs. Ha ha ha, but a deep voice that rattles my insides like a fucking subwoofer. It looks down at me and waves me away, seeing I'm just a confused kid, and speaks in barely understandable Bisaya, local dialect. I slowly back away from the house. Mum tells me I smell terrible and says I should shower. I look back at the tree, and see a massive hand go up in the air and wave. Wave back and go inside. I never really saw him again. For the better part of the year I had only smelt the odor of tobacco or heard his voice, but Kapres are normally nocturnal and I didn't go out much at night. His presence was very warm, never malicious, almost like your favorite uncle at family reunions. A year after, the tree there was cut down to construct a government building, and it was in the news that the entire construction crew died days apart, falling dead in their beds suddenly. Which is why you don't cut down belet trees, kids. Pic above is the closest comparison I could find to the Kapre I saw. Kapre are normally drawn to women and fall in love with them, so maybe this dude was just looking for a bro. Alright friends. Time to venture a few islands away to Brunei, where we moved due to my dad's occupation over there, and Brunei is an oil country, so they gave us free housing, free medical, everything we needed, and we lived in a subdivision called Rimba. Rimba was an upscale, nice place, pic related, not as clean though, need to find old photos, with lots of foreigners, and generally was quite a nice private community. While I was there, I encountered a Penanggal, which is a vampire type, similar to my first story from the previous thread that preys on pregnant women or young children. So here goes. Be me. Around 7 p.m. in Brunei. Biking around the subdivision. I have only been here so far a year and nothing relevant happened until now. Neighbors always told me to stay inside. Indian friends warned me about the jinns that would roam in the evening. It was a foggy evening, so I probably should have seen the horror movie signs in the first place. Wasn't very dark yet, almost as if it had just rained and the fog was part of it. Imagine in the mist levels of light, which is unusual for that time. The community is essentially a massive square, which is also how the roads are connected, so it's 2 lanes throughout the whole subdivision, and if you keep turning you'll end up at the gate again, impossible to get lost. I reach one of the farthest corners of the place and look forward. A long road with a turn at the end leading to the area where the gate is. See someone with long hair standing around but can't make out details. Keep in mind I am this kid with glasses and can barely see with them as is. Lady is also covered by a car, so I see just the head. Really nasty because I'm hit with the really strong scent of vinegar. I'm Filipino, so vinegar is like water to us. I immediately feel uneasy. My stomach drops and the hairs on my neck rise. I look closer at the head and see a pair of eyes staring back at me. Not normal staring, intense eyes. Even from a distance I felt danger. Pic above as neighbor's car with the place in the background to give you a better mental image. I immediately booked it back, all the while looking behind me. The problem is that if you notice in the pic above, there seems to be a small hut. Past that hut is the street where I encountered the spirit. As soon as I hit my street, it bursts out of the hut area past the street in a beeline. I have barely crossed into my street, still on the corner, so I immediately lean back and hide behind a thick tree. I see now it's just a floating head. Can't cry, too scared to cry. It begins to float back towards the street I saw it from, and I make a tactical decision. I count down to 10. See it cross and I drop my bike and book it towards my house. I don't see it anymore no matter how much I look back. Shitting myself because I'm thinking it'll be right at my door. Opens door and goes in, locks it. Half a minute passes and I hear a bang at my door. Just once. I hide in the living room away from the windows. Mum and dad in their room, but scared they'll die if I tell them I'm scared, cause they'll fall asleep on the floor. The next day, I tried hitting the door with my head and I freaked out because it sounded exactly how it sounded yesterday, which meant that it definitely saw me. Still rattles even now. This one, my friends, is called The Statue. Be me. Grade 8 high school kids and am halfy new to school. No one knows me, but everyone knows about white Asian boy running around. Hanging out with new friends who show me around. We go to the grade school building. The campus is in 2 halves, and is a huge gated place. One half of it is the junior high school, my building in the previous stories where I encountered dead girl in the 5th floor bathroom, and the other is the grade school halfway across the campus. High school boys not allowed in grade school area, hence 2 separate cafeterias. No idea why. Welcome to Jesus prison, I guess. During lunchtime we sneak over to their side past roving bands of kids. Before we get into the grade school itself we pass by a statue called Boy Savior, some kid holding a Bible and pointing towards it. Basically believed to be the statue of the child Jesus. Friends tell me this story of when they were in grade school the statue would move at night. Bullshit. They insist it's true and actually are scared of it. Call them pussies and flex my 2 ounces of bravery. We bet that if we stay late we can bait it to move and fuck around. New friends scared, but endeared by wild international child. So we decide. The next day we bluff to parents that gotta stay late to study in the library. MFW parents think I study. Gather up with our group of misfits. Like 5 of us including me that stayed behind to study. It's 8 p.m. now, library closes at 9 so it's our window for fuckery. Before I go any further, I'm fucking freaked out because I managed to find a picture of the very statue that is the center of this story. Continuing on, move in 2 groups to the other end of campus to meet at grade school. Grade school closes first cause they go home super early. Whole place is dark as fuck, literally 4 lights illuminating the whole place. 1 light stands over the Boy Savior statue. We stop a few feet away from it, both groups now together as one. One of my friends goes forward. Bye. Wag na Yuan Si Anon Lang Muna. Dude, don't try it. Let Anon do it first. Another one of our group advises. I go ahead first and face to face with statue. It's literally a statue. Pretty unnerving, but then again so is everything else at 8 p.m. in a Jesus school. Classmate jumps me from behind and scares the shit out of me. All of us laughing with our laughter echoing throughout the dead halls. Turn to look back at statue. Its head has tilted away from the book and is facing me and my friend group. Holy shit. JPG. We all shout in unison, literally a collective pants shitting. Its head used to tilt towards the book and now it's angled directly towards us. No one is fucking around, genuinely scared now. It's a solid concrete statue that cannot shift. We decide to go home. Shouting from earlier probably will attract school guards. All begin walking backwards, paying attention to the statue while trying to leave the area to head back to our building. Keep in mind, the pathway back to our building is either through a huge track oval in a field or through an old sports complex, all both wide open. As we walk back the lights begin flickering. Literally all 4 lights begin strobing. One of my friends books it. Rest of us begin to turn tail and run. I'm looking at the statue and I see the head move back to its original position. It wasn't like a twitch, it was like it was a real person. Smooth, controlled movement. Man, fuck that. We all book it for good and head to the gate. Regroup at the gate and are all in various states of panic. Freaked out, but we're fine, not dead or converted. We all saw what happened, exactly. Wasn't an illusion or game, it was what it was. All go home on our own in different ways, gonna meet up tomorrow. Shit doesn't end there though. That night I had a terrible nightmare. I do not have nightmares, I have terrible paranoia and anxiety from all those different incidents in the past, but this was bad. It was just the statue chasing me, could hear the concrete scraping against the ground as it moved rapidly towards me. Sound got deafening before I felt a hand on my shoulder and I woke up hard. 5 a.m. at this point, tired as fuck and can't sleep, so go to school wrecked. Meet up with friends before class. Class starts at 7:30. I get there by 7 cause I live in the neighborhood. All of us look fucked. These 8th graders look like college students. Apparently we all had similar nightmares about the statue and couldn't sleep. Later that day we attended the optional daily mass after school cause we felt like we fucked up bad. Mass is in the grade school chapel, literally 100 meters away from the statue. We sit through mass, communion, blessings, all that good stuff. Ash Wednesday earlier that day, so already had the ash cross on our heads because Catholic school. 8th graders were so scared we went to Mass twice. Mass finishes and we go home together as a group, just split up when we leave the school. Steer clear of the statue. Don't even try to look at it during Mass lest we get its attention or whatever the fuck. No nightmares that night or any other night. For the rest of my time in junior high, I did not try to fuck with that thing, not even a glance after sports practice or if we had to exit through that gate. Me and my friends still talk about it today whenever we bring up high school, and we all still agree that it was definitely something bad attached to it. Second year college. Exam week. College campus is pretty tightly spaced but full of stuff. Buildings are decades old and some obviously newer than the others. Going from building to building and passing by library. In between buildings are cement walkways. Around 6 p.m. here, so campus is still awake with night classes. Nice and grassy, full of trees, and walking between two of the oldest buildings in school for a class. Halfway through the cement path and feel my stomach drop all the way through my ass. Best way of describing it. At the same time my eyes cross and what the fuck. I'm looking directly at the school gates. I walk in again, go get my bag checked and sit down. I check the time and it's 8 on my watch. 2 hours passed and I basically reappeared at the gates. I ask the guard on duty who checked me. Feigned that I'm stressed over exams and didn't know what I was doing standing by the gate. Guard goes, "Nah no man? Deco Nikita. What do you mean? I didn't see you standing there." Full WTF mode. I missed a review class on exam week by respawning 2 hours later. Run to faculty to find professor. Just was honest with him, told him what happened, how I zoned out. Professor looks worried, tells me not to worry because this has happened to a bunch of his other students. Still gives me full attendance marks and the reviewer for our exam. It's a well-known legend that between those two buildings, you can just suddenly phase out, or just blink and be somewhere else on campus. I have no idea why and no explanation, but that was my encounter of it. It made me felt incredibly nauseous and was almost as if though someone had paused a movie about me, and skipped ahead. Felt disoriented and had to call in sick for my exam the next day anyways.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.